Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thanks so much for dropping by. I got a question that's very near and dear to my heart. Is Byrone Katie Neo-Advaita? It's very near and dear to my heart because I was very into Byrone Katie for almost a 10-year period. I kind of did, deep dives into her work, going to her workshops, and as many of you know, I'm very passionate about what is Neo-Advaita. So, is Byrone Katie Neo-Advaita? My answer is yes, no, not really, absolutely, but not technically. So, Neo-Advaita generally is based around one of two delusions: that everyone is ripe for self-inquiry, and or that there's no need to do anything because you're already enlightened. So the second delusion is easy to dispel. You absolutely have to make effort until you're unable to make effort. That's what Ramana Maharshi said anyway. And the first, Ramana Maharshi and Adi Shankar, were very clear that self-inquiry is only for the absolutely most mature, most ripe soul. So Byrone Katie's work, just on the surface, she's not Neo-Advaita because she's not Advaita in the letter of the law. Advaita is a very specific tradition connected to India, and Byrone Katie has nothing to do with that. And the technique she teaches is just, it's its own thing. She's doing her own thing now, but what she teaches, the message she teaches, is non-dual, which she says the final realization is that God is everything, God is good, and then that story goes too. She said that's sort of the final that's the final realization. Now, that's a very clear expression of non-duality. But the thing is, like many Neo-Advaita teachers, she presents the final chapter of non-duality, but does she offer a legitimate, dependable path to get there? And to that, I would say no. Having explored her work for many years, having spent a lot of money going to a lot of her different workshops, it certainly works in the moment. Her work lifted me out of pain over and over and over, but it didn't really create any kind of lasting insight, which, interestingly enough, is what Neo-Advaita does. Is it connects you to the self through self-inquiry, but it doesn't create that. It doesn't really remove the things that are actually blocking you. And Ramana Maharshi discusses this as the difference between lulling the mind and destroying the mind. And by mind, all he means is false identification. He doesn't mean the capacity to think, at least in my understanding of what he. So she's not technically Neo-Advaita, but she sure reminds me a lot. Some of the other characteristics that are reminiscent of Neo-Advaita is, she holds workshops, but she's not really available unless you're paying her money. She's not really available to help you on the spiritual path, which is just a telltale sign. Take someone like Ramana Maharshi, who was just available. Nisargadatta, Nisargadatta was pretty much Neo-Advaita himself, but he did invite people to come into his house. Like, he made himself completely available, didn't charge money. So those are a few of my thoughts on Byrone Katie and Neo-Advaita, and she talks the talk. She really talks the talk, and she's very charming. And from what she describes, she had a pretty profound awakening experience. She went from being homicidal, suicidal, agoraphobic, chain smoking, alcoholic, compulsive overeater, to like completely blissful. Like she just had a spontaneous awakening. Um, and she didn't really have a teacher to really guide her post that awakening, and it just seems to me like she's highly commercialized, and it doesn't seem to me she's highly commercialized. Her 9-day workshop. I mean, last time I checked, it was almost $7,000 for a 9-day workshop. Let's take a quick peek. She has a 28-day workshop that is $20,000, or at least it was. Who knows? Let's see. She's not offering those workshops right now, probably because of the current health situation. But yeah. So that's an issue. I mean, that's a huge issue right there. That's not Neo-Advaita. That's just commercialized spirituality. No fully liberated being can charge money to lead someone to liberation. I mean, that's just nuts. Just want to see if there's anything else I want to say. I mean, I got to know her. I mean, 10 years of going to workshops with her. She knew me by name. She, could remember some of the things we talked about. And I certainly remembered a lot of our conversations. And I mean, the thing is I think a lot of what's going on in the spiritual scene is you have very radically awake people who then think they can guide other people, and they just can't. Now, some of the things that, to guide them to liberation, like Byrone Katie's a wise woman. There's no question about it. And she's had a profound awakening experience, and she really, in some ways, really embodies fearlessness. But there's all sorts of signs of immense problems, and the money just being one of them. The plastic surgeries being another. And the thing is, here in the West, we all just want to do our own thing because organized religion is shit over here, right? It's just a mess. The Catholic Church is a mess. The Protestant Church is a mess. I don't know. I've looked at the Eastern Orthodox Church, but it's very small here in the West. But the thing is, if someone's not connected to a tradition, and if an awake being hasn't said, "Hey, you should go teach," then the person's just doing their own thing. They're like a doctor without a license. And that's a lot of what we have going on. And then it's a lot of what we have going on in the modern spiritual world. And it's just, it's a mess. So as a self-help technique, I think her work is fantastic as a way to liberation. Unless you've done all the proper preparatory work, I don't think it'll really get you anywhere. And that woman she exudes Shaktipat. I used to get high as a kite being around her. So much energy. So that's another thing, is just because someone radiates Shaktipat, that doesn't mean anything. It just means they've had a Kundalini awakening. So those were a few of my thoughts and my experiences. I got to know her quite well and her organization. And the last thing is, through an odd series of circumstances, I came to something that's a little bit of inside information, which is, I don't know if she's still doing it, but at one point she would do one-on-one work with people for $1,500 an hour. And this is like direct information I got from someone directly connected to her. And that's just fucking nuts. It's completely nuts. $1,500 an hour. It's almost $7,000 for a 9-day workshop. $20,000 for a 28-day workshop. And the thing is, this is the way she's most like a Neo-Advaita teacher, is She set up a system in which she'll always win. If anyone comes at her with a criticism of her or the work, she just turns it around on them. A Neo-Advaita teacher will always, boil down to, well, you are the self. So it's just there's some complicated word games that go on in her work and in Neo-Advaita that I would just say buyer beware. I would just stay away. Yeah, sure, do the work on your own. It's enticing though. I wouldn't even really recommend anyone to do the work. I mean, unless you feel called to it. Do her work. It's called The Work of Byrone Katie. Hello, the work of Byrone Katie. Hello. Thanks so much for joining in.